Do you smell something stinky? Is that gas? There's some dirty politics going on, folks, so that can only mean one thing. Promises is a segment I do from time to time about what our politicians are and aren't doing in the space of renewable technologies and getting us to a cleaner and greener way of living and operating. And today, I've got the privilege of interviewing Simon Holmes, Director of Smart Energy Council and Senior Advisor at the University of Melbourne's Climate and Energy College. But before I get into the interview, here's a brief on the issue of gas. Gas is one of Australia's major forms of energy, but only makes up a tiny portion of our Australian energy mix, typically seen in gas peaker plants to back up energy supplies. Natural gas is 34 times stronger than CO2 at trapping heat over a 100-year period and 86 times stronger over 20 years. In Australia, fugitive emissions, that's gas escaping into the atmosphere either in the collection, transport or distribution of gas, and unchecked, it contributes about 8% to total life emissions. The Kurri Kurri gas plant could become a $600 million white elephant that will seldom be used in response to the Lidl power station closing in 2023. Scott Morrison last year called for businesses to step up and put forward a replacement power generator. The response? Fast forward to May, and Scotty declared that Australia's publicly owned Snowy Hydro will become home to a new 660 megawatt open cycle gas turbine. Questions about the need for it are already emerging, and political scrutiny in Canberra is turning the heat up. John Stevens and Jeff McCloy, major Liberal Party donors, and Jeff, a former Newcastle mayor and businessman, purchased Kurri Kurri smelter, which they claim they'll turn into industrial estates, a business park, and a new suburb called Loxford Waters. Oh, and P.S. This will be the new site of the gas power plant. Gas will likely come from the Santos Narrabri project delivered via the Hunter Gas pipeline. Last year, the government appointed David Knox, a former CEO of Santos, to be the new Snowy Hydro chair. Developers Hilton Grijon and Graham Burns, co-founders of Hunter Land and major donors to the New South Wales Liberal Party, they're pipeline developers and could also reap millions from this project. In May this year, the International Energy Agency stated in their report, Net Zero by 2050, a roadmap for the global energy sector, that no new fossil fuel plants like gas should be built. Everyone, please welcome Simon.
Thanks, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure, mate. Look, I'm an absolute fan and it's an honour to have you on the show. I've read a lot of your work in various places, as well as your tweets, which I think are quite eloquent in how they bring together a lot of salient points like data, because without data, folks, it's like you're just an opinion, and how you often break down some very big subjects and help educate and inform not only the public, but also politicians and industry. So let's talk about Kurri Kurri, and apologies, I think I mispronounced it during the video introduction. There's a lot to unpack here, so perhaps if you could detail the International Energy Agency recommendations and how Kurri Kurri gas plant fits into it.
The IEA recently put out a report on how how the global community could reach, could achieve the Paris Agreement, and it came to the conclusion that scientists have many years before, but a very, very significant one for the International Energy Agency to come up with, that a strong recommendation, well, actually not even recommendation, and basically a determination that to meet Paris, to meet the Paris targets, we cannot build any more coal or gas power stations. We cannot extract any more oil, gas, or coal, approve any more mines. We must stop. We must stop expanding and start contracting those sectors. So, yeah, very significant from the IEA, which has never before really turned its mind to climate change.
The debate out there, people saying that this gas power plant is not required. Can you talk me through that? Why they're saying that?
Yeah, so the government has said they want to see this power station go forward. They've put it up saying the Liddell power station is closing down, therefore there's going to be a hole in the market and it needs to be filled, otherwise there'll be blackouts. So they've put forward this power station. Now the Energy Market Authority, or Energy Market Operator, AEMO, plus every energy expert that's looked at it has determined that actually the hole that would be filled, the hole that would be created with the exiting of Liddell has actually already been filled by new entrants into the market. So they announced that Liddell would close down. 2015 was first announced that it was about to close down. So they've had about six, and it would be closed in 2022. That's bumped back to 2023. So many years for the market to adjust to that. And a lot of new generation has been built in New South Wales. And soon well, not that soon, but within 3 or 4 years, Snowy Hydro will also, Snowy 2.0 will also come online. So the technical analysis shows that this power station's not needed. The Snowy Hydro actually it doesn't only own hydro; it already owns gas power stations around the country. It owns the largest gas power station in New South Wales, called Colongra. Colongra, in the last 12 months, Colongra has only operated with a capacity factor of 0.6%. Means 99.4% of its capacity is unutilized. It just sits there idle. Now that's actually not that uncommon for peaker power stations. They sit there waiting for significant events that often last only for 1, 2, 3 hours. So they sit there waiting for those events, and they might only operate for, say, 20 events a year, maybe only 5 or 6 times for 2, 3 hours. They'll start up and they'll generate just to cover the periods when, say, a coal power station trips or a transmission line comes down. We see this in the bushfires. Beginning of last year, there were major transmission lines that were shut down because fire was too close to the power lines. So they shut them down, and that all of a sudden they have to find power in a region where they might have been importing power from some other region. So peaker stations are very important for keeping the lights on, but they don't sit there and generate 24/7, 365. They're just for a few hours at a time. So they're actually perfect application for batteries. And the great thing about battery is that it doesn't create any pollution. It's able to use whatever generation. It can use surplus wind or solar generation to charge it, and then put that back into the grid when the emergency happens. So there's been a lot of calls that actually, if you had $600 million to spend, which clearly the government does have, you wouldn't put it into building another gas power generator that hardly runs. You could put it into a battery that could do useful work every day of the week, every week of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a good demonstration of, keeping the lights on and lowering prices has been the success of the Hornsdale battery, which for like $90 million first time round paid itself off because of the islanding events that occurred with South Australia.
A gas power generation can only really cover those sort of emergency events, whereas a battery has a whole lot of different streams of revenue. It can do the frequency support in the network, it can do system strength, it can do black start. So if there's a complete blackout, it can help get the network up and going again, and it can do arbitrage, so moving energy from one part of the day to another part. So there's all these different system services that a battery can supply where the gas plant can't.
Yeah.
One thing really interesting, and I think that a lot of people have a perception that as we get rid of gas, and have more renewables, we also we'd have to have more gas, and we've actually seen that doesn't hold true in Australia. Gas power generation peaked in about 2013 in Australia, and is about half. We're at about half the level it was then. This year will be the lowest usage of gas since I think 2006. For power generation in the national electricity market. So we don't, the gas is important. We burn it very strategically. Those strategic uses are being pushed out by batteries. But we're not expecting to see an increase in gas generation in Australia as coal leaves and renewables ramp up.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, we're about to talk about renewables and technologies like battery storage. And I guess that from my perspective, that $600 million they want to use of taxpayers' money could be better spent on a massive, mega, like gigawatt hour battery that we is, I think, planned for New South Wales. Is that right? I think something like that.
Oh, there are quite a few batteries planned around Australia. What's amazing, I mentioned before the AEMO's integrated system plan. And the step change scenario is a remarkable document, a massive amount of analysis. All the data for it is available. It's really a treasure trove of information. It provides a costed plan to take us to 96% renewable by 2042.
Mm-hmm.
What's surprising is, although there's a reasonable amount of storage involved, it sounds a lot. It's roughly 90 gigawatt hours of storage required to do that. But that works out to be the equivalent of just 4 hours of storage for the whole system. So I think intuitively we think, if you want to have backup for the whole system, you're going to need weeks and or days and days of storage. But it turns out with just 4 hours of storage, the equivalent of 4 hours of storage, you can bring you can take the system to 96% renewables, having only 4% left being covered by fossil fuels. Now, if you want to get rid of that last 4%, there are ways to do it, but I think long before, there's about 10 different ways you could do it, but long before 2042, or maybe we bring it forward to 2035, long before then, we'll have more solutions and more confidence around which solutions are best.
A big thank you to Simon for helping me with this interview. It really was some awesome sage advice. And hey guys, girls, if you want to actually see the video in full right now, consider joining me over here on Patreon, where from as little as $2.50 per month, you can see this and a heck of a lot more. And if you haven't already, consider subscribing. It's free. And otherwise, you be good and you be great.